This Week in Radio Tech, episode 213, is brought to you by the Axia Radius IP Audio Console, Axia IP Intercom, and Axia Talent Panels. Axia tools that make your studio work for you and your most demanding talent. Online at axiaaudio.com. Vinny Lopez takes us on a dive into the waters of PC-based television production. Radio stations and syndicated radio shows are producing TV along with their radio content. Vinny, Chris Tarr, and Andrew Zarian join me for a look at what's possible. Plus, Chris and Vinny discuss remote-controlled production equipment and SBE educational opportunities. Hey, welcome in. It's This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host for the show. Glad you're here. You're the viewer. I'm the host. We got a co-host, and we got a great guest. How about that? It's This Week in Radio Tech, the show we talk about radio technology, typically everything from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower and everything in between. But this week, we're gonna go a little far afield and talk about stuff that, you know, radio engineers are going to have to learn more than just IT and internet protocol and things like that. There's stuff with pictures that radio engineers are having to learn. And so we're branching out and bringing you Mr. Vinny Lopez as our guest. First, though, let's direct our view up to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'll bet you Chris is there. Chris Tarr, welcome back to the show. Haven't seen you for a while. Glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I'm one of our palatial studios here at Radio Milwaukee in downtown Milwaukee. I am the Director of Engineering and Operations for 88.9 Radio Milwaukee, also contributing writer for Radio Guide magazine, and co-founder of the radio engineering site, broadcastengineering.info.
Well worth your while, engineering friends, broadcastengineering.info. Definitely check that out. And also, let me encourage you, if you go to the 88.9 website, Chris, what's the web address for your radio station?
It's radiomilwaukee.org.
radiomilwaukee.org. Let me encourage you to do what I did at least once so far. I may be able to do it again, and that is to donate a few dollars Chris's way. Like many or most community stations, they operate on donated dollars, and I think it's a good cause. They have some great employees there. One of your buddies, one of your colleagues is a friend of mine on Facebook, TWiRT Moody. Is that his name?
Yes, our digital director, TWiRT Moody. Yep.
Digital director. Okay. See, that title didn't
He
even
handles
exist.
all of our interweb stuff.
Okay.
He understands the Googles and the Yahoos and things.
Well, I think your station is well worth supporting, and I am appreciative of it, and especially the live programming that you guys do. You said you've got a live concert coming up right after TWiRT. It won't be on this network, but you're going to go engineer it, right? Yeah,
and actually, we actually just recently received the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association Major Market Music Station of the Year Award for 2013.
Wow.
Yeah, we're going to be doing every Thursday. We have a local band in and from around the area, put them in our facility, which is a combination studio and performance venue, and give them an opportunity to perform in front of an audience and live on the air. So it's a great way to expose these local bands to a new audience, and also for listeners to kind of hear what's coming out of our city.
Awesome. Milwaukee, home of some pretty good homegrown music. And you have gorgeous studios there. You gave us a tour on a previous show, so appreciate that. Folks could to roll back and find that somewhere in the archives. You guys you've just built a fairly new facility there. Are you finding the need for any more upgrades since now that you're in it and maybe discovering needs you didn't know you had?
Yeah, well, in fact, it's kind of this ongoing process. You really don't know what you're going to do with the space you have till you get in it sometimes. And we're finding, for example, we just put in a new sound system in our performance space. We found the one that we had really wasn't doing the job. And, kind of looking at some of the things we're going to be talking about today, video. Obviously we have these artists in and we can record those and play those back. And we're going to be soon launching a video channel on our website that is where you can watch the performances that we've had in our studio. But of course then we're looking at upgrading our studios with lighting and video as well. So, we have, we got going, we moved into this facility in the end of August of last year. And at the time that we've been here, we've already done a couple of upgrades on some certain systems since we've been here. Just, now that we know kind of what we're dealing with and some of the things that we can do, we added a projection system in the performance space because we found out that, we can let other nonprofits use that for board meetings and things like that. So we put in a system with a projector and that sort of thing. We upgraded. Another thing we did is we upgraded our audio mixer. We had a PreSonus 24 channel PreSonus. We upgraded to the 32, which allows our producer to use his iPad to walk around. Instead of hiring a bunch of people to engineer these performances, we can use one person with the iPad to walk around. And with that same iPad, because we're using the Axia system, we have control to start and end segments from that room without having to have a board operator in the studio. We can actually control the Axia through the iPad. So, we're finding ways to, we spend a little bit of money up front on technology, but in the end, kind of save us a little money on because we're such a small staff. We have about 14 people. So it allows us to do some pretty big things using technology without having to, really, outside of the initial acquisition, spend a lot of money to maintain.
Chris, you have just touched on so many things in your in your soliloquy there, in your monologue, that we could spend a whole show on any one of these. Tell you what, let's go ahead and bring in our guest, Vinny Lopez. Vinny, welcome in, past president of the SBE, the Society of Broadcast Engineers, and all this time, you're director of engineering of a couple of TV stations in Syracuse, New York. Welcome in, Vinny. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Kirk. How you doing today?
All right.
It's good. Yeah.
Tell us just a little bit about the TV stations. Tell us about your career in TV,
and
then I want to hit on some of these
WSYT and WNYS television, Fox and my network here in Syracuse, New York. We used to be a Sinclair station. We're now owned by a much smaller company, Bristlecone Broadcasting, also known as Northwest Broadcasting. So it was a big difference going from a group of hundreds of stations to a group of 10.
Oh, yeah.
So, but anyway, right now I am live in our studio using a little thing that I've built up here. This is a live stream studio switching software and the hardware control as we look over the shoulder here. But it does a lot of things, and I figured this was a good opportunity to give it a whirl and try it out.
Okay, so first off, I want to ask about this software and the hardware that you're using there. First thing I want to ask is I tried building up a switching system like this early in the days of this this netcast, This Week in Radio Tech, and I sure had a lot of trouble figuring this out. And I thought, is really my only choice USB connected cameras? Although this one's not bad. I'm getting basically 1080p video out of this one. But so here's my question. For the first question, what cameras are you using, and how do you get those into that PC?
What it is, the software is designed to run on a PC. It requires quite a bit of horsepower. This is a hex core i7 running in this PC. I had the PC built because it was a difference of about $100, and I said, I'll take the warranty with it, thank you much. It uses Blackmagic design cards. These are JVC Aviro camcorders right now, just little 35 camcorders. They're HDMI into a Blackmagic intensity card, and the other one uses an HDMI to SDI converter to go into a Blackmagic Decklink card, because I'm using the other Blackmagic card as an output to go into the Skype machine, which is a dedicated encoder, and it has an Osprey ViaCast card. So I'm sending you NTSC. We're down converting the cameras in the studio software because I didn't have time to really proof it and test it for HD. But it can do that.
Okay, so the cabling between these cameras is HDMI cable.
Right.
Well, one of them converts to SDI, and the other one is straight HDMI in.
Right. Okay. HDMI going right into the Blackmagic card in the box, and HDMI to SDI using a little converter, and then going into the SDI in the box. So
do you have any,
this, strangely enough, not yet, but it will be able to soon work with webcams. It only works with Blackmagic hardware right now.
Okay. All right. Hey, if Andrew Zarian wants to jump in and ask a question or two about the software, that'd be awesome. Because my experience had just been with stuff that only works natively with USB connected cameras, and I guess I've never jumped into that world of using Blackmagic or other capture cards. That seems like a whole world of incompatibility headaches.
Yeah, well, we had a little incompatibility here as I was trying to get this thing configured for this week. There's actually a Blackmagic card in the Skype box, and I couldn't get it to take an HD signal out of the studio. So that's some more testing that needs to be done, because the sausage wasn't completely cooked yet.
Hey, Kirk.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, what Vinny's saying is absolutely true. It's a lot of finessing that has to go on to get this to work properly. Even though the hardware that supports it, the software may not. And that's well, even if they say it supports it, it may not at one point. So it's a lot of playing around and coming up with the right configuration and the right combo to get it to work properly.
Wow. Yeah, another thing that this can do, and this actually works quite well, it's called remote camera. If you have a laptop or a device, a cell phone, that's on the same network, you can bring it in as a remote source. Like this is a picture from my laptop. Hey, Chris Tarr, any idea what that is?
Looks like lens flare.
No.
It was on the air at the time. That's a resistor stack in an old Pi transmitter that had caught itself on fire and was burning itself out.
Oh!
And it was still making 25% power at the time.
Yikes.
But yeah, you can take pictures from a laptop, or you can take a website like the GFQ website here and just feed it back in. Another interesting little thing you can do is if you have the live stream app for a device, and I don't know if this will work on the first try here, but let's see if we can get it to go. You can take that item and let's see, there it is. And my cell phone is acting as a camera here over the Wi-Fi.
Okay, so it's Wi-Fi connected. All right.
It's Wi-Fi connected. And like I said, it's 640 by 360. It's not HD by any stretch. But like I said, as long as it's on the same Wi-Fi, they have the software for devices, Android, iOS. You can bring them in as a remote camera and go from there.
Can you imagine covering an event like this? Give 10 people cell phones, put them on Wi-Fi in some venue, some event, like maybe in Chris's live performance space. Give a few people a cell phone and the app, and then you have all those as options for cameras.
Exactly. You get a bunch of people sitting in the back with their iPhone, and they're just acting as your eyes and ears, and you've got your main cameras that you're switching, and you can go to one of those people anytime you want.
Sorry, my brain just went to, what if we could do this back in 1978 at a Grateful Dead concert or a Doobie Brothers concert, and somebody, somebody's back there, rolling an adult smoke, giving instructions how to do that.
Well, that's part of the problem with life.
The mind wanders.
Cameras around.
Yeah,
right.
You can't do it.
Way to take the fun out of it, man.
Yeah.
Hey, so Chris, you're planning video in your live performance space. Why don't you and Vinny kind of chat a bit about what you're planning on doing, and grab some of Vinny's expertise in fleshing that out.
Well, we actually because I'm not totally involved with that project, actually.
Oh, okay.
I'd be more than happy to. We actually we have a video guy who does video for Foo Fighters, a lot of those bands, and he's actually helping us design the system. Right now it's pretty simple. We got a couple of GoPros and we've got those hanging up, but I'm actually going to be reconfiguring one of our audio production studios to do audio and video. So we'll do switching and things like that in that sense. But it's kind of, because it's so far out of my expertise, I brought in somebody else from the outside to kind of lead that charge, since, I'm just slowly now learning, when you're talking about the various kind of connectors, I was like, okay, I know those initials. I know what they mean. I'm getting there.
I'm the same way.
Yeah. But you touch on something, which is, I am by no means the only radio station where that's happening. I know the intercom stations here, all over the country. Radio now is really starting to get into video, especially with the websites and content with iDevices and things. So, I'm watching as intently as I'm sure a lot of radio guys are, because these are all things I think that, we're going to have to really know, and maybe not as much of a deep dive as Vinny would do, but obviously, we need to be familiar with these things, because that's where it's going. I mean, that's, we're as radio people, we're going to be doing that now. Even 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was setting up, machines with Final Cut and Vegas and things like that for our producers to put together video, just for streaming, for promotional stuff. Now we're getting to, with the performance space, things like that, actual live video will be streaming these events. So I do think that, as a radio guy, things that we're discussing today are going to be more and more important and more directly related to what we do down the road.
Vinny, you come from the television world, and normally, I guess you're dealing with, full-size TV cameras and big switchers and all the pro gear, which is exactly what radio probably can't afford to do. That radio needs to do stuff like what Andrew Zarian is doing and other netcasters who are switching cameras. What's the best bang for the buck? What technologies give us the best bang for the buck in producing video that at least looks acceptable and maybe even compelling? You have some advice to hand out about that?
Yeah, there's a lot of devices out there right now that go this route. There's the live stream stuff that I'm using here. You've got your NewTek TriCasters, which do a wonderful job, but those are the Cadillacs of the world, and they command a pretty large price. There is Blackmagic Design, makes a nice little one-rack unit switcher that you control from a soft keypad on your computer. ATEM TV Studio. There's a lot of choices out there. I think, Andrew, you use VidBlaster, right?
No, we did, and we abandoned VidBlaster, and we headed for the hills. We went over the Wirecast.
Ah, okay. Wirecast is another option that I was going to go with. Telestream Wirecast. There's a ton of them out there if you just walk around. I mean, walking the floor at NAB this year, there were all kinds of solutions for this. All kinds.
Gotcha. So no matter which one you pick, Vinny, can you think of what's the biggest gotcha? I, as an audio guy who knows a little bit about video, I'm always thinking, ooh, what about lip sync? What might I do wrong to really screw up the audio video relationship, and what tools would I have to correct that if I need to?
The biggest problem you're going to run into, and we had touched on this a little right before we started, is interfacing whatever cameras you have to the computer, because there's only still a few ways to do that and get full bandwidth video out of it. Aja makes cards, Blackmagic makes cards. Going a little deeper than that, maybe not the best idea, because those are consumer level cards. I think Matrox has just come out with a broadcast quality card as well for Wirecast specifically, but I don't know how long it would take to integrate that with other devices. So that's one of the hardest parts. Most of the software or hardware solutions do have some delay control and adjustments in them. I know that the live stream box here that I'm using does have a delay adjustment and things like that as well to change that around. You could also resort to delay lines or things like that. Of course, you've got your Axia console you can do your automatic mix minus with too,
With considering audio and video and the various latencies involved, in thinking about your broadcast studios there at your TV stations, and then thinking about the live stream software that you have and other similar. So which usually needs to get delayed to stay in sync with the other? I guess which one natively takes longer to get through typical broadcast gear, so that you have to delay it so that the other one can, or you have to delay the other so it'll catch up.
Usually the video takes longer to get through just because of the bandwidth that it consumes. So more often than not, you end up delaying the audio or doing something with your audio to make it happen right.
So at least expense-wise, audio is probably a cheaper thing to delay purposely than video is.
Exactly. It's the trial and error of figuring out how much and adjusting to that really can drive you nuts.
How much, if we think about the amount of difference, and I'm sorry, I'm just stuck on this lip sync thing, because it is kind of an issue, and even in the HD broadcast world, there are issues with, different TV sets and all that. So how much is the amount of time that's considered okay difference between audio and video? And I realize that in one direction, the leeway is probably better than in the other direction.
I find most people can see 5 or 6 frames. It's that close. They can see that little bit of delay or offset in lip sync.
How much is that in milliseconds? Any idea?
5/30ths of a second.
Okay.
I guess I need some Common Core math here.
1/6 of
carry the 3 plus
divide
7.
by 2.
Divide by
7.
2.
Are you guys
So
actually
not very much, Kirk, to answer your question. Not very
yeah.
much at all.
30 milliseconds? Is that too much? 50 milliseconds?
Sure, we'll call it 30
difference?
milliseconds.
Call it 30, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's probably
Yeah,
less
we'll go
than
with
that, though.
So you want to keep your sync audio and video within 30 milliseconds of each other, and that will, to the human eye, that looks okay for lip sync purposes.
For most human eyes, yeah.
Okay.
You always the end product. All TV sets are different, and while they all say, yeah, we conform to the DTV standard, well, the way they get there is not always the same. So we have people that call all the time regarding lip sync, regarding captions that aren't quite correct, regarding languages that aren't supposed to be there that show up. It's a mess. It really is.
Wow.
So a hot mess.
I thought a hot mess, the working title of the show, a hot mess of nothing. So thinking about one more thought about lip sync, and is that if you're watching a television program and the audio is leading the video, so that you hear the words and then you see the guy's mouth move, that's more disturbing than if you, because if you're standing 50 feet away from somebody and they're talking, there's going to be that you see the visual instantly, and the audio is delayed by 50 milliseconds. If you're 50 feet away from somebody, it's about 1 millisecond per foot. So we grow up in a nature world where audio often is delayed from the visual by a few milliseconds.
Right. And we're conditioned for that. So when we see it, it doesn't bother us as much as the audio coming first, then the video. So we here get around that. Look, like
Chris, it sounds to me like TV's way too difficult. We should just stop. Just go back to just radio. No pictures, maybe a couple of stills. This whole syncing things up and switching and too much work.
It's radio with pictures. Complicated pictures.
Complicated pictures. So, hey, I want to move on to a different subject, and something that Chris Tarr touched on, and that is this notion of controlling devices with these consumer things like iPads, and I guess TriCaster has this available. I've seen people on other networks use that. Chris Tarr mentioned doing some control of Axia gear, and Axia does have an app that puts a whole console, an audio console on, well, not an iPad. It's not written for iOS. It's written for Windows. So you can have a Windows tablet and run your whole audio console there. And same thing with video switching. So let's riff on that notion for a minute. Number one, it's just kind of cool, to hold a tablet and to control something with it, especially, guys like to remote control stuff, whether it's DJI helicopters, or AR parrots or whatever it may be. We just love to remote control stuff. So Chris, you were talking about, not having enough employees, and this makes it possible for one guy to do a couple of jobs, do a live mix, take care of the EQ and sweetening in the room in the live event, and also handle the broadcast, beginning of the show, end of the show, kind of mixing and getting in and out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. By the way, you mentioned the remote control of planes and stuff. It just brings me back to watching Barry Thomas's video of his quadcopter where he kept, landing it into the trees in the house, and it's some funny stuff there with Barry. It's interesting. I was kind of even a few years ago on the leading edge of trying to remote control things out of necessity. With Intercom and all those radio stations that I still to this day take care of. I came up with ways to, I've tried pretty much every remote desktop client on the planet for iOS and for Android. And I think it's just kind of a natural extension of where things are going with remote control, be it transmitters or video or audio. I even have an app that I was playing with that uses an iPad and iPhone where you can, set one of the devices up as a camera and remotely see the viewfinder and hit the picture from the other device. So I think it's in our nature to kind of make things portable because it just makes it a lot easier to multitask rather than being tied to a chair in some studio pressing buttons remotely. And that even goes back to the days of remote wiring switches. So I think as we see time go on, and we're talking not only from the video side but the audio side, being able to do these things remotely. Now, I wish I could remember the vendor, because you got me thinking about that. We had a recent SBE meeting, a vendor come out with a small little video switcher that uses SDI or HDMI, and again has a remote control app for iOS devices where you can walk around and preview and take sources. And you can have it set up where audio follows video and that sort of thing. And you can literally just walk around, during an event or whatever, and do all the switching and previewing from wherever you are on the network with your application. And I think that, I think that's, I like to call it the great equalizer. And Vinny was talking about how some of these consumer companies are getting into this game. And I think, while we can't get the same kind of video quality as, say, a TV station or a big production house for doing web-based video production, I think we're getting to the point now where, you can get one or two guys and be able to get close to a network quality, or at least, close to TV quality through these devices where, you have one guy walking around with an iPad controlling the cameras and things. And you can get a pretty decent production put together for, relatively speaking, very few dollars.
Vinny, in the TV environment, and you're playing with live stream, tell us your thoughts about remote control and using tablets, and how does this, or how could this make TV operations better?
It could, if the app is written correctly and it doesn't fail all the time, it could be a huge bonus. Like Chris was saying, he's building out his studio there. He could have one guy sitting in the back or up in front or anywhere, just switching the whole show like that. What you want to watch out for is that if the app tends to crash, you're going to be in a hurting way quite quickly. So you got to make sure that the apps are stable, they're written well, and that the company has support that you can get a hold of them via email or phone and just say, hey, what's going on here? Why is this crashing? Well,
I think too, there's, it's I like to call it the pain point. With all this, obviously, in a perfect world, we'd afford the high quality manual switching with somebody there who's experienced and has expertise in doing this and handling those situations. So you're absolutely right. These things can and probably will happen with crashes and things like that. And that's where you have to understand where your pain point is going into this. And I talk about that. In fact, I wrote an article a while back about using IP codecs for studio transmitter links. And I always mention that as part of the spiel. It's like, what's your pain point? Know that they're going to fail at some point. Are you okay with that? Do you know what to do if it happens? Do you have a plan? As long as you have all that, it's really not a bad deal. But you're absolutely right. I mean, keeping in mind that these are, I don't want to say entry level, but close to entry level devices, I would never take the place of a skilled, a skilled person in front of,
Absolutely.
An enterprise class console. These are lower end devices, and as long as you're okay with that, you'll get good results most of the time.
Right. There was a real broadcast, one of the first broadcast news automation systems that came out a few years ago. And they had told a friend of mine whose station bought one of these, you can expect to lose one newscast a month because the thing will crash on you.
Oh, wow.
Wow. That's...
Well, that's the thing. It's like,
that's...
how much money are you willing to save?
Exactly.
That's a great line. How much money are you willing
I'll save
to
you a ton of money. If you don't mind losing one newscast a month, you'll save a ton of money. Now, if that bothers you, then you want to spend some more.
But nowadays, things are a lot more reliable, a lot more stable. That doesn't happen as much anymore. So,
Vinny, at your stations, do you have a newscast automation system?
We do not have a newscast. We are Fox and My Network. We don't mess around with that stuff. We used to have newscasts done by other stations in the market, but currently we do not.
As you know, I do some part-time work at the Fox affiliate in Nashville. It is a Sinclair station, and it's one of the Sinclair stations where they've decided to take local news pretty seriously.
They just rebuilt that.
Beautiful studio, 6 HD cameras, all robotic. None of them ambulatory. None of them move. Still a floor director. But the cameras don't have to. There's 6 of them. You don't have to move them around. Any shot you want, it's probably already there. But my point is that they were using, or they are using Ross automation for their news automation. And at first they had plenty of issues. Now, honestly, most of them, a couple of them I think were Ross issues, but most of them were just getting to learn all the stuff you got to put in and think about. And it's interesting how automation, if you have live operators there, so many things get handled just because people are smart, they're clever, they kind of know what to do. An automation system like the Ross automation or any other one doesn't know everything you got to do until you tell it you got to do it. So to this day, when at the TV station, when we do a bump shot, which is cameras way up high in the ceiling, wide angle lens, shows the whole studio, including the cameras and the green screen and everything, just a bump shot in or out of the spots. For some reason, our mics are all hot during the bump shot. Every mic is hot during the bump shot. And so the director always reminds us, we're coming back on a bump shot. Your mics will be hot. Your mics will be hot. And, really? Why do they all have to be hot? But so, got to be careful. Can't pick your nose.
And I also think where humans do a good job is with error recovery when those things do happen. Typically when an automation system goes south, recovering from that's a lot more difficult. Whereas if a human screws up, usually recovery, chances are the only person who ever knew there was a problem was the people sitting in the control room. So, but that goes with broadcast automation as well. I mean, broadcast automation, 98% of the time works beautifully on radio. I mean, you never know. It's that 2% where things go really bad, that things are horrible because we get kind of dependent on that. So when it stops working, it's like, what do we do? Where do we go? So, I think you're right on with the TV automation and as Vinny was saying too, with producing live video. Hey, 98% of the time things are going really well. It's that 2% that you have to, either know are going to happen and just accept it, or, have some decent planning in place to make sure that when that does happen, you can jump right in and take control. Because I've heard of stations where overdrive or whatever failed, and then what? What do? You're dead, and it's only in those stations where there was actually still live people around that were able to recover from that and make something happen. Now, if that hadn't been the case, it would have been dead in the water. And I think that kind of goes, I think, to pretty much any industry where automation has come into play. You do kind of lose that human factor of, okay, things are going, things are falling apart. However, I've been here before. I know what to do. No problem. I can make this work. Computers don't know that. And, computers will only do exactly what they're told to do. They won't make those decisions when things are starting to go downhill.
You're right.
Well, I want to remind our audience you're watching This Week in Radio Tech. It's episode number 213. I'm Kirk Harnack along with Chris Tarr. Chris in Milwaukee today. And our guest, Vinny Lopez, engineer, past SBE president. We're going to get to talking about Vinny, about SBE, why he wanted to run for president, and his thoughts about where we're all headed as a collective group of engineers, and how we can make our industry better and our careers better, and how SBE could be a part of that. So I look forward to Vinny's comments on that. Right now, I want to tell you that our sponsor is Axia Audio, and I got a couple show and tell items here with us right now. First of all, thanks to Axia for sponsoring our show. Did you know that Axia also makes intercoms? A lot of folks don't know this, and so many radio facilities that could use an intercom don't have one. Now, when I was doing full-time engineering at radio stations, I never worked at a station that had an intercom system. We always thought yelling down the hall was probably good enough for what we needed to do in radio. Well, if you have an Axia system, adding an intercom is easy. You basically plug them into the same Ethernet switches that are handling the Axia Livewire audio, and you browse into the intercom. Here's an example. This is a big one. This is meant for a desk. This could sit on the manager's or a news producer's desk, somewhere where they may not have an audio console or an equipment rack nearby. So you can plug this in. It's a 20-station intercom. You pre-program these buttons. Microphone plugs in right here. A headset can plug in right here if you choose to use a headset. Functions are available from this knob. And on the back, well, there's just a couple of plugs. There's a power plug, and there is a Livewire plug. So this is one way to do intercom. Axia makes intercoms panels in all kinds of form factors, 1RU and 2RU units that sit in an equipment rack. Well, here's a simple one. This is called the IC1, the Intercom 1, IC1. Here's the little gooseneck microphone that you can get for it. You can get these in different sizes, and you can get them from various sources. These would be you'd program these buttons and label them with they're all film cap buttons, and so that's one style of intercom. I don't have one right in front of me here, but there are other ones that have OLED readouts. You can have either 10 or 20 in a 1 or 2 RU rack unit. We also have a fairly cool feature. I don't know if it's released yet, but now we can have an intercom also talk to register with a SIP telephone, a SIP server. So now you can make a phone call to or from an intercom panel using a session initiation protocol, SIP, or voice over IP. Here I have in my hot little hands another Axia product. This is an Axia Radius control console. Now, you don't have to wire this thing. The only thing that goes to it is one CAN bus cable right here on the back, just one CAN bus cable, and that carries all the high-speed serial data that runs the meters. It lets all your button controls, go to the engine, and all the fader controls. In fact, if Andrew Zarian has his camera ready, he could show you his Axia Radius console that's actually mixing this very podcast right now. All the audio on the GFQ network, there you go, goes through that console, including our automatic mix minus. And this is just a dream. It's just a dream come true to have automatic mix minus. No matter how Andrew would try to screw this up, it can't be screwed up. You bring a source up, and it creates mix minus as a backfeed for that source for any source that you want. So Vinny Lopez right now is being fed mix minus audio of me and Chris and Andrew. Chris is being fed mix minus audio. That's me and Vinny and Andrew. And I'm being fed mix minus, so I'm hearing Andrew and Chris and Vinny, but not myself back. It's just amazing how well that automatic mix minus works. Got one more thing I want to show you. Gotta drag it over here. If you have an Element console, there are a variety of panels available. This thing's kind of heavy, but you can see here. Talent panels. Here's a producer panel that if you have a show producer that doesn't have that doesn't need headphone control, but they're listening or they need to talk to somebody, this panel can be mounted in the furniture right next to them. Here's a fancy talent panel, lets them choose what they're going to listen to and set the volume of it, turn their own mic on and off. There's a mute button to, if they have to cough, and a talkback button. So somebody on a panel can push this button and tell the board operator, hey, can we break pretty soon? Just by pushing that, and it won't go on the air. Then there's other panels also too, a film cap button panel and an LCD panel that works with our Pathfinder software to make those LCDs read out and change colors and do functions. So a whole slew of accessories are available for Axia products, including intercom, talent panels, and as I showed you there, the small Radius console, just a wide variety of stuff to build your broadcast facility out. So if you want to find out more, go to axiaaudio.com on the web, axiaaudio.com. And, hey, check out the intercoms. They're pretty cool. Plug them right in. By the way, all the intercom audio is full broadcast quality. You can put it on the air. Yeah, Chris?
So I always, don't want to feel like I'm doing the Axia commercial, but I pass this along just because I found it real interesting and also kind of a testament to the Livewire standard. I'm in the process of building a translator, FM translator for an AM station. And the AM station the studio uses Axia. It's an Axia network. So in planning putting this station on the air, it's surprising how simple it is. Now, the Nottel transmitters, VS1, has an option for built-in audio processor, plus it takes Livewire. So how do we get from point A to point B? It's real simple. I've got Axia network going into the audio coming from the studio with Axia into a Zip1 IP codec. So that's Livewire into that. Then that talks to the other side via IP. Livewire coming out of that directly into the transmitter. You're done. How easy is that? I was planning this facility out. It's like it's a no-brainer. So. I just want to say, one of the great things about Livewire and how Livewire is starting to kind of show up in all these kinds of devices. See, we're putting a new automation system that has the Livewire drivers in them. So it's getting to the point now where, I've literally 2 pieces of Cat5 and I've got, audio directly from our console into a transmitter. It's unbelievable.
Amazing. It is. It's cool. And I'm amazed at how it was so difficult for me to understand at first. 14 years ago or 12 years ago, Steve Church wrote a white paper about audio over IP and LiveWire and how this would work. And I swear I read that document 5 times before the light turned on in my head. Oh, I get it now. So thanks, Chris. I appreciate those good comments and firsthand experience about how easy that it is. And by the way, I'm paid to say that, and you're not. So thanks for adding your comments. I really appreciate it. AxiaAudio.com is the website. Appreciate Axia for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, we're on episode 213 with Vinny Lopez. And Vinny, you are a past president of the Society of Broadcast Engineers.
Yes, indeed.
What in the world could cause you to run for such a political...
SBE began in 2000 when I was elected to the board. I served as board member, secretary, vice president, president, immediate past president, and now has been.
Okay.
And you do realize we have on the show today a current board member, a past board member, and a past president.
Yes.
Oh.
That is correct.
Wow.
Mr.
Was
Tar
on the
was on
board
the
a couple
board
of years
for
ago.
a couple of years.
Yeah. In fact, I just got elected as the vice chair of my local chapter here about 3 weeks ago.
Every chapter needs somebody in charge of vice.
That's right.
He's
and
a good
I am
man
the
for the job.
perfect man for the job. Exactly.
Chris, I had forgotten that you were a board member.
I was. Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, the rules have changed now that would make it a little easier for me. But back then, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but one of the requirements for a board member was you had to attend at least one of the national meetings each year, and it would involve travel, and I couldn't afford it. So I'm just a working guy. So after my first term, I had to step down and not run again. But I have very fond memories of back going out to Vinny's town there to their yearly convention out there.
To
where we
Verona,
had,
that's coming up October 8th of this year at the Turning Stone Resort and Casino, the Broadcast and Technology Expo. Hope to see you all there.
I'll be there.
It's a fantastic show. Fantastic show.
I think I'm doing a paper or something, some kind of.
Yeah. We're gonna corral you as long as you're in town to do a paper. We might as well go for the heavy hitters while we've got a captive audience.
So privately, off the air, I need to talk to both of you about how to best stir the pudding at the meetings.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
We have plenty of pudding stirring stories for you.
So Vinny, I'd like some more thoughts on SBE. Has been, okay. A number of people who watch this podcast are members of the Society of Broadcast Engineers. We could use a lot more members too. It's an organization built by and for broadcast engineers or others interested in broadcast engineering. Give us some of your views and thoughts, and then we'll drill down into that about SBE.
Well, what we need to do is expand on the term broadcast. Let's take Andrew here for a minute. Andrew does his own engineering of his own studio, and he is broadcasting one to many, right? Broadcast. Mm-hmm. So we could consider Andrew a broadcast engineer. So let's get Andrew signed up first.
Yes. Let's take Andrew. Please take Andrew.
No.
Yes.
We need to expand where we're headed with the society. We need to involve more guys like Andrew with the podcasts and things like that. We need to offer them meaningful education, meaningful presentations, just meaningful information that they can understand, and that's not, the big stuffy call letter station kind of thing. Otherwise, our ranks are getting smaller in the call letter world. That's not a problem of anybody's. It's just reality of the situation. Am I right?
Yeah. And you mentioned stodgy, and unfortunately, as friendly as everybody in our chapter is and other chapters I've gone to, which has been a ton of them, the word stodgy comes to mind, but I'm not blaming anybody in particular. It's just, it's kind of endemic to the culture. And hey, younger engineers who are learning and maybe they're doing things that aren't transmitters. In fact, they probably are doing things that aren't transmitters. They're probably doing more things like live stream and TriCaster and Axia consoles or Mackie consoles and wireless mics and venues and streaming. And those folks, we need to make sure that they're welcome.
Right. And then we also need to make sure that they're served. We've got to give them something to make them want to join and to make them stay around.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, and I think that's a discussion we're having in a lot of the chapters, is how to bring those people in and get them into the fold, because broadcasting has taken on such a, for a long time was such a narrow term, and it really has expanded. And, the SB has done a pretty good job of trying to bring them in, the broadcast network engineering certification and things like that. But I think part of it is even getting the members to understand that these other disciplines are on equal footing with what we do. In fact, in some cases, it's a lot more difficult than what we do, and we could learn a lot from them. A lot of these new technologies that broadcast is using, a lot of them start in those other industries and then get to us. So I think there's a lot that these people can bring to the table for us, and vice versa. I think there's a lot of sharing of technologies that can go on. And I think it's also can be helpful to the new technology guys to kind of get an indication from us. Even historically, it's real hard to know where you're going if you don't know why we've been where we've been. And I think that, the more that we can get together, especially through meetings and these sorts of things, and learn from each other, I think we're all better off in the end. But I think, again, the big step that we have to take is to get people outside of the broadcast industry to know that we're not this, small little cadre of transmitter guys who really couldn't care less about non-broadcast entities. I think that's not, I think that maybe there's a small group of people where that applies to, but I think in general, I think we're all open to doing that. It's just, I think we're having a struggle knowing how to reach out to them and how to get that message out.
Right. What we need to answer is, where is the next generation of us going to come from? And it's going to come from the ranks of the young people getting into the business that want to, and we've got to make it worth their while to continue down the road.
It just crossed my mind that maybe you guys have kind of been saying this or implying it, that the next generation of engineers, and we do talk about that, but remember, they may not be doing what we do in the business.
Right.
I don't know when the demise of big honking transmitters will come along. Seems a while before that'll happen. But it will happen someday, and the internet and other wireless technologies through cell carriers and others will end up being a predominant or a large portion of what we do, and we got to know how to deal with that. So the next generation of engineers may not look like us.
However, there is a whole bunch of history that feeds into what they do today. I mean, a very bad example, but a good example, a bad example in terms of it's kind of meaningless, but a good example in terms of history is, how many automation systems in radio do you know that still use the word cart to describe an audio file? Now, if you're a new engineer, you have no idea why people, I had somebody say that to me. Why are these called carts? What does that mean? Or a sectone, or, those sorts of things. And I was able to say, well, historically, we've played, these tape cartridges, but in all of these types of devices and mediums and things, there are those little historical things in there. Even some of the standards we use are based on pretty good reasoning from many years back to why we went that way. And, there's a whole, I had a discussion with a younger engineer a while back who basically kind of sometimes has the impression that anything that wasn't discovered by his generation is inherently bad. And, why should I need to learn that? This stuff's much better. It's like, well, there's a lot of history there that kind of leads you to where you are now. And even if you don't need to know, why do I need to know how a car, how to align a tape machine? Well, because there is some science there, and there is some history there that, while you don't need to do a deep dive on it, you really should be aware of how those things were done, because you may still A, run into them, and B, some of the things you see today are based on those paradigms. So I do think that there are some things that, historically we can bring to the table to the new generation of people, just like, there's a whole bunch of new technology out there that I'm just learning that some of these people have mastered that I could certainly learn from. So I think that, again, that's kind of the key there, is I think each party has something to offer the other. It's just that, how do we get together and do that?
You're right, Chris. You nailed it right on the head. And that's the looming question that we really need to figure out, is how to get together and how to do this. And that's why we got to rely on Kirk and the other sitting board members to come up with a plan to go in that direction.
All right, I'll be listening for your answer. I'll be calling you tomorrow and find out what your answer is to that, Kirk.
I've been enjoying some of the education webinars that SBE has been putting on. the ones that Wayne Pacina have been doing about networking, especially some advanced networking. I guess I'm signed up for whatever the next one is there. Folks should look into that. But in that same vein, you know what? We could use webinars on how to do streaming in all its various forms and formats. You know, NPR just recently decided that they're going to go with, I believe, with iTunes Radio and the HLS protocol for multi-rate streaming. So that's something that manufacturers, including Telos, are jumping on that opportunity to help those stations out with that. But maybe somebody should explain that. You know, there are several of these multi-rate streaming protocols: MPEG-Dash, Microsoft SmoothStream, and Apple's HLS, and there may be others as well. I think Adobe may have one as well. So these are technologies that, wow, we all got to get up to speed on very quickly. Seems like this is a great place for SBE to jump in and offer education on those technologies.
Yeah, last year's Ennis workshop, Jan Ozer did the opening segment on streaming, and I thought that was really well received. So we could find a way to get that out to more people. We'd be in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm. And we've done some on this show as well. Chris and Tar and Chris Tobin have been a big help in sharing that knowledge of how to get that done. You know, we've only got a few minutes left, Vinny, and I'm sure it seems like we've only covered a few subjects. I'm sure there's something else that may be on your mind that you wanted to make sure we got talked about. What's Vinny Lopez passionate about in engineering that you'd like to share with us?
Vinny Lopez, there I go, talking about myself in the wrong person again. Stop that. I just like learning new things. Like this whole deal here that I'm sitting behind, I said, let me put this together. And it came together in about a week because I had the box in one place, the cameras in another place. And I just said, let's see if it's doable. And, you know, we do a lot of remotes at the expo especially. We're going to be, in fact, streaming the SBE membership meeting this year as well. I want to do the awards dinner as well. So we'll get that out for the first time. And that takes a lot of work, just setting this stuff up, run and gun, and figuring out ways to come up with the creative solutions when something doesn't work or something's not the way you should. That's the stuff I love doing. You know, stuff here at the station is pretty much predictable day to day. And that's a good thing, you know what I mean, in and of itself, because I know how things are going to work or expected to work. But I just love getting out there and doing things like this.
Good. Yeah.
And
Chris, go ahead, Chris.
The Chris agrees with you. One of the things I love about this job is you know, learning new things or even just tackling new things. You know, that I may not be in the mood initially to learn something, but as soon as I start getting my head around it, it's exciting. I mean, learning Axie was a big thing for me, and now I mean I can't wait to get my hands on the next one to play around with all the things that we can do. But you know, just recently I had to configure a matrix KVM switcher thing, which was, you know, just a real kind of a daunting task, but I dove right in and learned it, and it was great. And I agree with you completely, Vinny, that, you know, one of the great things about this line of work is that, you know, outside of the day-to-day stuff, there's always an opportunity to learn something new. And, you know, the things that I learn every day are fantastic, and I look forward to that.
We had the Chapter 22 meeting last night, and we had John Kowalski from ClearCom in talking about intercoms and the things they're doing with these matrix intercoms. Hit one button, and it shifts all the panels anywhere on the network that you've got the things programmed to do what you want to do. It just boggled my mind.
And there you go. It's an intercom. Talk about the bastion of boring right there. It's an intercom.
Exactly.
How exciting can that be? And then you start adding all these technological leaps to them, and all of a sudden it's just this fascinating world of intercoms. Who knew?
And someone had made a request. Well, can my automation issue a command to the intercom system to set up the next IFBs for the next segment of the newscast automatically when we come back from the break? Yeah, anything's possible. You just got to write the software and the code to do it. So that's not where I am, though. I'm not a software guy. I don't know about you, Chris.
You know, I'm dabbling in it. But yeah, I usually am the guy who tells the software guys what I need. Here, if you can do this, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I don't. I never had the patience to sit there and code continuously. I do little bits here and there, but like I said, after about an hour just sitting there, my eyes just start going like this, and it just goes nuts on me. So,
guys, we're going to draw the show to a close. Man, this has been fun. I appreciate both Chris Tarr being able to take the time. Chris, I know you got a event to run to. And Vinny, thank you for taking the time to build up that switching system. Show it to us. I love the remote camera. That's cool. From the cell phone.
Yep,
That's
it's like I said, it's the new technology. It's quite the new things, and like I said, I always love new things. So it was great being here.
All right. Thank you. We'd like to have you back again soon. And thanks for the thoughts on SBE as well. You've been watching This Week in Radio Tech, episode number 213 with Vinny Lopez and a hot mess of nothing. I think it's our show title, unless we get a different one. Our show's been brought to you by Axia Audio and all the accessories and the Radius console. And you ought to check it out on the web at axiaaudio.com. Thanks to Andrew Zarian for producing today's show and the GFQ Network for distributing it. Remember, we're here every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's usually around 1800 UTC. Check your local listings for times. You can always watch the show online, download it, download the audio, or you can subscribe to the RSS feed of the audio and just have it automatically downloaded to your netcasting device or net catching aggregation program. That's what I do, this podcast and others. So I'm in the car, in an airplane. Got something good to listen to. It's educational. Appreciate you being with us. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye, everybody.